Sometimes you hear about something, maybe a shortcut, feels like a better, faster way. Imagine that, but applied to something really dangerous, like chasing a high.
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
So today, we're really diving into the reality behind fentanyl. It's often misunderstood, and it's just everywhere now.
It really is.
Our source is that great Kurzgesagt in a nutshell article, the one called Fentanyl is Garbage Heroin.
A very direct title.
It is. And our mission here is pretty straightforward, really. We want to understand why. Why has fentanyl become so common, and what is it actually like, especially next to heroin?
Right, compare and contrast.
Exactly. We want to pull out the key stuff, without getting totally bogged down in jargon. So whether you've heard bits and pieces or this is fairly new, we're aiming to break it down clearly.
Okay, sounds good. And I think to really get it, we kind of have to start with the brain itself, like how it handles pain and pleasure normally.
The baseline, right.
Yeah, the baseline. It's this fundamental balancing act. Your brain has, this built-in system. Pain says problem, pleasure says rewards. Simple enough. And right at the core, you've got these things called opioid receptors. Think of them like docking stations, specific spots.
Okay.
And our bodies make their own molecules, endorphins, that fit perfectly there. They manage pain, create well-being, but in a regulated way. It's all about keeping things, level equilibrium.
Right, like our own internal pharmacy, keeping things balanced. But then heroin shows up.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it just completely hijacks that whole system you just described. The article even calls it a supernova of bliss. That's intense language.
It really is. And it fits. Because heroin and other external opioids, they basically flood the brain. They hit almost all those opioid receptors all at once.
Wow.
So you get this massive, overwhelming wave of euphoria, this deep warmth, calm, no pain at all, physical or emotional. It's an extreme peak.
Almost hard to wrap your head around, that level of intensity.
And that extreme feeling, well, that's exactly where the problems start to kick in, that initial rush. The brain just isn't built to handle it or, crucially, to replicate it naturally.
Wow.
And what's, fascinating and really tragic, as the article points out, is people keep chasing that first high, but the effect, it diminishes fast.
So the brain adapts.
It adapts. It gets used to this artificial flood.
Which leads us into that really dark territory, addiction and withdrawal. It sounds like a really steep downhill slide.
It is. The article explains how quickly tolerance develops. Your brain actually starts increasing its sensitivity in both the pain and pleasure circuits.
Wait, increasing sensitivity. So you feel pain more easily.
Exactly. And pleasure becomes harder to achieve naturally. So eventually heroin stops providing that big euphoria. It's mostly just keeping the withdrawal sickness at bay.
So it shifts completely from chasing pleasure to just escaping pain.
Precisely. It's a desperate attempt to avoid feeling absolutely terrible. And the article, it doesn't mince words about withdrawal. It's intense anxiety, zero sleep, physical agony, vomiting, diarrhea, this overwhelming sense of dread. It's the complete opposite of that first high. You go from feeling impossibly good to just trying to feel slightly less awful.
Okay, so that sets the stage. And now fentanyl arrives, this garbage heroin.
Yeah.
And the article just hits you straight away. 50 times more potent than heroin. 50.
It's a staggering number, almost abstract. It's so high.
It really puts the danger into perspective, doesn't it? And it gets into the brain super fast, crosses that blood-brain barrier quickly.
Right, that protective layer around the brain. Fentanyl slips through very easily.
So the effects are almost instant.
Yeah.
And this is key, they don't last long, like minutes.
Often, yeah. Very short-lived compared to heroin. And here's the really counterintuitive part the article stresses. The high itself, it's described as less euphoric.
Less.
Yeah, more like a black hole of nodding out. Not that warm, blissful feeling associated with heroin. It sounds bleaker.
So worse high, faster addiction, worse withdrawal. Why? Why is it taking over?
Well, this is where the article makes a crucial point. Its main purpose isn't really about user pleasure. It's fundamentally a tool for dealers.
Ah, the economics.
Exactly. Think about it from their side. It's incredibly cheap and easy to make in a lab. No fields, no crops, just chemicals.
Right, compared to growing poppies for heroin. Huge difference.
Massive. And transport costs. Minimal. Because it's so potent, you only need tiny amounts. A little goes a very, very long way.
So the profit margin must be huge.
Astronomical. And this completely changes the game in the illegal drug market.
And it leads to that terrifying practice the article mentions, cutting other drugs with it.
Yes. Because it's cheap and potent, dealers mix it into cocaine, meth, fake pills that look like Xanax or OxyContin.
Even ecstasy, the article said.
Even ecstasy. And the really horrifying thing, as the article stresses, is that often the person taking it has absolutely no clue.
They think they're getting something else entirely.
Exactly. They aren't seeking fentanyl, they're looking for cocaine or a pain pill or whatever, and it's laced with this incredibly potent, potentially lethal substance without their knowledge.
That statistic you mentioned earlier about the seized pills.
Yeah.
What was it again?
Yeah, it's chilling. In 2023, 150 million pills containing fentanyl were seized. 150 million.
Okay, wow.
And get this, 70%, 7 out of 10 contained a potentially lethal dose.
70%.
It just highlights how widespread this contamination is and how many deaths are essentially accidental poisonings. People aren't necessarily chasing fentanyl, they're encountering it unknowingly.
It's such a tragic irony then. The article sums it up so starkly. Fentanyl gives less euphoria,
Right.
leads to faster, worse addiction and withdrawal, lasts a shorter time,
Much sure.
and is just vastly more deadly.
Exponentially so.
It's not an upgrade on heroin.
Yeah.
It's a trap. And like you said, because it's so strong, one tiny miscalculation, one pill someone didn't know was laced,
Yeah.
that can be it. Final.
Absolutely. And, beyond the drug itself, the article also touches on something else important. How we understand this crisis, how it's reported.
The media angle.
Right. It mentions looking at U.S. policies on fentanyl smuggling, for instance, how some news sources are really critical, maybe comparing it to the war on drugs failures.
While others focus more on, say, needing stricter border control.
Exactly. Different angles, different framings.
And the article mentioned ground news as a way to sort of see those different takes side by side.
Yeah, as an example of a tool for media literacy, which is just a really important point overall, isn't it? When we're dealing with complex stuff like the opioid crisis, we really need to try and see multiple perspectives.
Be wary of sensational headlines, maybe.
Definitely, and be aware of our own biases, that tendency to just click on things that confirm what we already think. It's crucial for understanding the bigger picture here.
Okay, so stepping back from all the details, if we were to boil it down, what are the absolute core takeaways from the article for you? The things you'd really want someone listening to remember?
Good question. First, I think, is just hammering home that fentanyl isn't heroin plus. It's not better, it's worse. The article calls it garbage heroin for a reason.
Right. Less reward, more risk.
Exactly. Second, understanding why it's spread. It's driven by profit, by dealer economics, not by users demanding a better high. That's key.
Okay.
Third, the addiction cycle. It's faster, it's harsher, the withdrawal is worse, and the initial reward is arguably less appealing than heroin's.
Got it. Faster, harsher cycle.
Fourth, the hidden danger. The fact that it's often present without the user knowing makes it a silent killer in the drug supply. That contamination issue is huge.
Yeah, the unknowing use part is terrifying.
And finally, number 5, I'd say, is remembering this isn't just about a drug. The opioid crisis is tangled up with economics, misinformation, mental health. It's much bigger and more complex.
That's a really clear summary. It covers the drug, the market, the experience, the hidden danger, and the broader context. Nicely done.
Well, it's a lot to take in, but those seem like the crucial points from the source.
Definitely. So as you're processing all this, maybe something to think about is, well, if these economic forces make fentanyl so dominant, how might similar pressures be shaping other parts of the illegal drug landscape?
That's a really interesting question.
And also in this world just flooded with information, especially on charged topics like addiction, what can we actually do to become better at sorting through it all? How do we get past the noise and find real understanding? Definitely some food for thought there.